episode 4 of Conspiracy Theory TikTok Roulette. I want to give a big shout out to your fix guide, and I'll link that in the description. I was having a major problem with the stuttering and stuff in the last video, and I just followed his tips, and hopefully everything's going to run smoothly. We'll see, but he made it very easy to follow along with and everything like that. So check him out for any kind of PC, laptop issues with recording and stuff. He definitely has a fix on there. But besides that, let's get to it.
Number 6. The U.S. deliberately infected people with STDs. Guatemala, 1940s. American researchers, funded by the U.S. government, traveled to Guatemala and deliberately infected soldiers, prisoners, and psychiatric patients with syphilis and gonorrhea without telling them, without their consent, and without ever treating most of them properly. The goal was to study how the diseases progressed and whether penicillin could prevent infection. The researcher leading the study, John Cutler, was the same man involved in the infamous Tuskegee syphilis experiment, where black men in Alabama were denied treatment for syphilis for decades, also by the U.S. government, also under the banner of science. The Guatemala experiments weren't discovered until 2010, when a researcher stumbled onto archived documents. President Obama personally called the Guatemalan president to apologize. Around 1,300 people were deliberately infected. Many were never treated. This wasn't a rogue operation by a mad scientist in a basement. It was approved, funded, and operated by official government health bodies. The conspiracy theory that governments have used vulnerable populations as medical test subjects without consent isn't a theory. It's a documented, repeated, bipartisan, historical fact. If your trust in institutions feels slightly wobbly right now, that's not paranoia. That's pattern recognition. Number 5. The Ford Pinto Fire Memo. Here's a fun thought experiment. Imagine your company discovers that a design flaw in your product will cause it to catch fire and kill people. Now imagine that instead of fixing it, someone runs the numbers, figures out that paying out wrongful death lawsuits would be cheaper than a recall, and files that calculation away as official policy. That's not a hypothetical. That's the Ford Pinto. In the 1970s, Ford released the Pinto, a compact car with a fuel tank positioned in a way that made it catastrophically prone to rupturing and igniting in rear-end collisions. Internal documents, which became public during litigation, showed that Ford engineers had identified the defect before the car launched. An internal cost-benefit analysis, now known as the Pinto Memo, weighed the cost of fixing the flaw against the projected cost of settling death and injury lawsuits. Fixing it lost. The car went to market. People burned. Ford eventually issued a recall after enough deaths triggered regulatory pressure, but by then the document was already in court and in newspapers. The conspiracy theory that corporations will knowingly let customers die if the math works out in their favor turned out to be a literal memo with actual math in it. Capitalism didn't invent conscience. Apparently, it just runs it through a cost-benefit model first. Number 4. The Gulf of Tonkin incident was fabricated. The Vietnam War escalated because of an attack that almost certainly never happened. On August 4th, in historical style, 1964, the U.S. government reported that North Vietnamese torpedo boats had attacked American destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin for the second time in 2 days. Congress responded by passing the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which gave President Johnson virtually unlimited authority to escalate military involvement in Vietnam. 500,000 troops, 58,000 American deaths, millions of Vietnamese casualties, all downstream from one incident that the Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara later admitted was probably a radar malfunction and nervous sailors firing at shadows in the dark. Declassified NSA documents released in 2005 confirmed that analysts had manipulated intelligence reports to make the Phantom attack appear real. The first incident on August 2nd likely did happen. The second one, the one that actually triggered the resolution, almost certainly didn't. Johnson himself reportedly told an aide shortly after, with characteristic Texan bluntness, that those sailors had probably been shooting at flying fish. He knew. He escalated anyway. A generation of young men were drafted into a war that was politically justified using an event that was, at minimum, wildly misrepresented, and, at maximum, completely invented. Your government didn't just spin the story. They fed it into a wood chipper and handed Congress the confetti. Number 3. COINTELPRO and sabotaging civil rights leaders. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, ran a covert counterintelligence program from 1956 to 1971 called COINTELPRO, and its explicit goal was to infiltrate, discredit, and destroy political organizations the government considered threatening. That included the Communist Party, yes, but also the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Black Panther Party, and individual figures like Martin Luther King Jr. The program sent King an anonymous letter after bugging his hotel rooms, compiled a dossier of his personal life, and explicitly encouraged him to commit suicide before his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance. That sentence is real. It is in declassified documents. The FBI, the nation's premier law enforcement agency, attempted psychological warfare against a Baptist minister who was receiving a peace prize. Activists were framed for crimes. Leaders were fed to rival groups to provoke violence. Informants were planted to manufacture internal distrust. The program was only exposed when a group of activists broke into an FBI office in Pennsylvania in 1971 and mailed the stolen documents to journalists. The government tried to suppress publication. Some papers ran it anyway. COINTELPRO wasn't a fringe allegation floated by people in tinfoil hats. It was a systematic, taxpayer-funded campaign to eliminate political dissent by any means available. The conspiracy wasn't theory. It was policy, with a budget and a filing system. Number 2. The sugar industry buried heart disease research. Your sweet tooth has been lied to at an institutional level. In the 1960s, the sugar industry was facing a scientific problem. Researchers were starting to connect sugar consumption to heart disease. This was bad for business, so the Sugar Research Foundation did what any reasonable, multi-billion-dollar industry does when science threatens profits. They paid scientists to redirect the blame. Specifically, they funded Harvard researchers to publish studies emphasizing dietary fat as the primary cause of heart disease, while minimizing sugar's role entirely. The researchers were paid the equivalent of roughly $50,000 in today's money. The funding was never disclosed. The studies were published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1967 and shaped nutritional policy for decades. The low-fat dietary guidelines that dominated public health messaging from the 1970s onward, the ones that sent everyone scrambling to eat fat-free products loaded with sugar, were built partly on a foundation that the sugar industry had quietly purchased. Documents exposing this arrangement weren't uncovered until 2016, when researchers at UC San Francisco found them in archived industry records. By then, obesity rates had climbed for 50 years, and the low-fat gospel had already done its damage. The conspiracy theory that food companies manipulate nutrition science for profit wasn't paranoid speculation. It was a receipted transaction, literally, with names, dates, and dollar amounts attached. Number 1. The tobacco playbook was copied by the oil industry. This one is almost impressive in how brazen it is. After Big Tobacco successfully spent decades manufacturing scientific doubt about the link between cigarettes and cancer, other industries watched, took notes, and ran the exact same play. Internal documents from ExxonMobil that emerged through investigative reporting and legal discovery revealed that the company's own scientists had concluded as early as the 1970s and 1980s that burning fossil fuels was warming the planet and would cause serious long-term climate disruption. Their research was sophisticated, accurate, and largely aligned with what independent climate scientists were publishing. Then, the company made a strategic decision to fund climate denial instead. They bankrolled think tanks, funded contrarian scientists, and ran advertising campaigns designed to convince the public that the science was unsettled, while their internal models were quietly predicting sea level rises and temperature increases with alarming precision. The strategy had a name borrowed almost directly from tobacco: manufacturing uncertainty. Make the public feel like experts disagree, even when they largely don't, and you buy yourself decades of regulatory inaction. A 2023 congressional investigation confirmed that major oil companies had continued funding climate disinformation efforts, even while publicly claiming to support climate action. The conspiracy wasn't that climate change was fake. The conspiracy was a coordinated, industry-funded campaign to make you think scientists weren't sure, while the industry's own scientists absolutely were. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future.
I think about the whole climate change thing is that yes, climate change is real, but it's a natural thing that happens repeatedly. Just like we have our seasons that change, there's a much larger change that goes on top of that we just don't have all the data for. It's not caused by humans, it just happens. And that's why we have layers of history. And as far as the other stuff, I'm not surprised. We've been manipulated and lied to by industries and governments so long that I can't believe anybody believes a word anyone says anymore. It's crazy.
Most people think that the firmament is a myth or a physical dome. In reality, it's a lethal energetic barrier. Our planet is wrapped in Van Allen radiation belts, a high voltage fence of intense radiation that fries human DNA. For 60 years, we have been trapped because aluminum rockets and chemical fuel simply weren't enough to survive that microwave. We didn't lose the technology to go to the moon. The truth is, we've never had the technology to leave this cage, but we have possibly just solved it. The 9 scientists that are currently unalived or missing, they're the crew that just built the first real door. And it started with Monica Jacinto Reza. She perfected the Mondaloy. This isn't just a metal, it's a molecular skin for the ship. And you have to understand that standard metal is like a screen door to radiation. It lets lethal energy of the firmament pass right through. But the Mondaloy is different. It's a nickel-based superalloy that acts as a radiation-proof shield. It provides the skin for the ship that doesn't just resist the extreme heat of the engine. It blocks the high-voltage charge of our atmosphere, protecting our human heart and the ship's brain from being fried. But a skin isn't enough. You have to understand how rockets actually work. Every rocket we've ever built is like a firecracker. They launch, they go fast for a few minutes, and then the engines turn off. For the rest of the trip, the ship just floats. The problem is, if you float through the firmament, you're a sitting duck. You'll get fried before you're halfway out. That is why they needed Nuno Laredo and Zhao Yangyang. They didn't build a bigger firework, they built a lattice-confined fusion. This is an engine that creates nuclear power directly inside the solid Mondaloy core. It provides constant, infinite thrust. It doesn't float, it punches. It's like driving through a forest fire at 200 miles per hour instead of walking. It moves so fast that the radiation doesn't have time to touch the crew. We were told that the US and China were enemies. They were actually pooling their geniuses to build the needle. Most people think that the firmament is...
Be careful, the tree is fake. That tree is fake. Yup. Just like fucking expected. That thing is closer. You're not gonna tell me it's fucking not.
I already measured the distance from the porch to the fence. Here we go. Exact spot, and we're gonna walk it out. Same exact line as yesterday. Going to measure by foot, and then do the math in inches, and then we'll figure out how many feet away it is. You guys can't tell me I'm wrong. Everything about this thing looks fake. It doesn't sound real. Do you hear that?
That's crazy.
What if the conspiracy is back when America was
A 34...
I just continue to wonder about if it's not the president coming out, do you see any authoritative figure that could come out with a level of credibility that would make Americans say,
unless somebody walks out of one of those labs with something and releases it before they disappear or commit suicide by shooting themselves in the back of the head 12 times. I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. And last one for you. What do we know, if anything, about these 10 scientists?
It's actually more than that, actually, if you go back a little farther. But we know that they were in our aeronautical defense industry, or complex, just all around the spectrum on that. And it's
with clearance, many of them high
level clearance. And you figure 10 of them, that we'll just say the 10. If there were 10 chefs across this country disappeared or died mysteriously, people would start questioning what the heck. There were 10 used car salesmen, dealerships, 10 preachers, 10 whatever, 10 masseuses, I don't care. I think America would probably take notice, and I think they finally are taking notice because this all fits in.
I just
There's a lot of reasons why people think and have these conspiracy theories that Epstein was a spy, an intelligence officer for a foreign nation. The main one that comes up is Israel, that he was an intelligence spy for Israel. Netizens think that this is just too much power. The way that if you read through Epstein's emails, he does not align himself with one political party in the United States. When someone he's talking to is Republican, he takes a more Republican viewpoint. When someone he's talking to is a Democrat, he takes a more Democratic viewpoint. And it just seems that all of his connections lined up more so to be in the Democratic Party. Because he had Ghislaine Maxwell who knew the Clintons, and then they knew all of these connections, but it does not seem like he himself was like a staunch Democrat, like, oh, I lean left, these are my political views, which is so interesting. But he's so well connected globally to a bunch of international foreign nations and leaders. One of his last book purchases in the last 3 months of his life is Lolita, the annotated and revised version about a man who is obsessed with the 12-year-old girl. However, the most interesting purchase that everybody has been dissecting thus far online is, quote, the title, Rise and Kill, The Secret History of Israel's Targeted Assassinations. People think it's interesting because there is a speculation that he is an intelligence officer, a spy for Israel, and then he ends up dying in prison later. Additionally, he would also make these very strange notes that he would email himself. It's like he's speaking in code or he's talking to himself. Number 26, taste, food, kissing. It's like he's playing the world's weirdest word association game. Other lists include money, agreement, debt, power, value, wealth, cost. Number 27, dreaming all day long. Number 28, only 6 senses. And then at the bottom of this like numbered list, it would just be a whole group of people's names. Hopkins, Danny, Chomsky, Teal, Hoffman, Ehud, Bannon, Barack, Woody.
What?
So it seems like it's just code. It's just weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's very weird. There's a lot of reasons why people think.
All right, fucking tree Bert. Let's see what we're. Nah, no way. No fucking way. Yo, the yarn is fucking broken. There's no way. There's just no fucking way. I mean, at this point, my brain is fucking scrambled eggs. Let's fucking measure this bitch. All right, same exact spot. Tight yarn. And we're going to measure. Look at this. Look at this. This looks different. This is absolutely fucking wild. Just measured it. 3 feet, 5 fucking inches. It moved away. 3 fucking inches. Fucking tripped out. I don't trust the yarn at all anymore. That freaked me the fuck out. I'm going to leave this fucking rock here. I'm going to leave this rock here, and let's see if the rock fucking moves. How about that? Oh, and just been looking up for the past, 17 fucking minutes. No fucking birds. Never any birds. All right, fucking tree Bert. Let's see what we're. Nah, no way. No fucking way. Yo, the yarn is.
Let me wake you up with this video.
This heaven teaching in the sky didn't come from Jesus. This hell under the ground didn't come from the prophets of God. This came from your slave master. The slave trader was the one that originated hell was under the ground. Why? Because he wanted the ground we were on. So by telling us that hell was under the ground, we stopped digging. And when we stopped digging, he started digging. So now the white man's name is Rubenstein, Goldstein, Silverstein, huh? Even when you want to go buy the diamond or the gold or the ruby, you got to go to a jewelry store. Why? Because they tricked us to believe that there was a hell under the ground, and they stole the rubies, stole the silver, stole the gold, stole the diamonds. Am I telling the truth?
Let me wake you up with this video. Let me wake you up with this video.
The Epstein files aren't the end game. They are a distraction. While we're focused on those names in the documents, the people who actually own the system are laughing because the real crime didn't happen on an island in the Caribbean. It happened on an island in Georgia. In this episode, we'll cover the Jekyll Island takeover that privatized the American dollar and the truth about 2008, where the collapse of Lehman Brothers was actually a calculated consolidation of power. You won't want to miss this one. On the freezing cold night of November 22nd, 1910, a man named Frank Vanderlip stood on the concrete platform of the Hoboken Railway Terminal in New Jersey. He was clutching a shotgun case in one hand and a heavy leather suitcase in the other. He had the collar of his thick wool coat turned up high to hide his face to anyone walking past him in the station. Frank looked like a regular guy heading south for a hunting trip, but Frank wasn't normal. He was the president of the National City Bank of New York, which today is known as Citibank, and he was representing the financial interest of the Rockefeller family. Now, Frank was one of the most powerful men in America. He was terrified because, according to his own autobiography, which would be published 25 years later in the Saturday Evening Post, Frank felt, in his own words, furtive as a conspirator. He knew that if a reporter recognized him or if a photographer snapped a picture of him on this platform, it wouldn't be just a scandal. I mean, it would likely cause a stock market crash. So he just kept his head down. He walked past the main passenger cars and made his way to the very end of the platform. And there, sitting in the darkness away from the station lights, was a single private rail car with its blinds drawn tight. He walked up to the metal steps, he looked left and he looked right just to make sure he wasn't being watched, and then he climbed aboard. Now inside, the air was warm and it smelled of very expensive cigar smoke, and he walked down the narrow corridor and he entered the main cabin. And sitting there in the dim light were two other men who were dressed like hunters, but who were definitely not hunters. One was Henry Davison, a senior partner at JP Morgan Company. The other was Paul Warburg, a German banker who was widely considered one of the smartest financial minds in the world at the time. Frank didn't say hello, he didn't shake hands, he nodded, he put his shotgun in the rack and sat down. Now, a few minutes later, the train hissed and lurched forward and it began its long journey south into the night. Now, as the train was moving, a fourth man entered the cabin. This was Senator Nelson Aldrich. Now, at the time, this man was the head of the National Monetary Commission and probably most politically powerful man in the United States Senate. Now, he looked at the other men and he laid down the ground rules for the trip. He told them that for the next week, they were not allowed to use their last names, period. They were only to address each other as Frank, Harry, Paul, and Nelson. And he explained that the servants on this private train car knew who Senator Aldrich was, but they didn't know who the bankers were. And if the servants heard the names, Morgan or Rockefeller or Warburg, they would talk. They would blow the lid off everything. They would tell the press. And if they found out that the most powerful politicians and most powerful bankers in America were sneaking out of New York together in the dead of night, well, the public would probably riot. Now, you have to understand that the atmosphere in 1910, the American public absolutely hated Wall Street. They called it the money trust. They believed that the Epstein files aren't the end game. They are a distraction. While we're focused on those names and the documents, the people who actually own the system are laughing because the real crime didn't.
I have a theory of where consciousness is stored in the body. This one is a little bit crazy, but stay with me until the end. I promise it's.
Yo, the glitter conspiracy is a rabbit hole you are not ready for. So I didn't know this, but there's legit only like 2 main manufacturers of glitter in the world, both of which are based in New Jersey, of all places. And yes, I'm talking like regular glitter, the same stuff you use in arts and crafts. One of these companies is like super secret and private, that apparently invented glitter themselves and is very hush-hush about everything. And the other is GlitterX. No one really thought much of it until it came out that we actually have a worldwide shortage of glitter back in 2018. Kind of a weird thing to be short of. So a journalist from the New York Times went in to interview the team at GlitterX to find out. She casually asked if she could tour the factory, and surprisingly, GlitterX told her absolutely not. Like, there was no debate about it. She was strictly not allowed to see how glitter was made and wasn't even allowed to be in a nearby room to even hear how it's made. So instead, she was just left to interview a manager at the company, and things just kept getting sketchier. She asks the manager if she could tell her what industry serves as her biggest market, and the GlitterX rep instantly, without hesitation, tells her, "No, I absolutely cannot tell you." Confused, the journalist asks her if she knows who their biggest customer is, and she replies with, "Oh God, yes, and you would never guess it." Let's just leave it at that. Asking why she can't talk about it, she responds by saying because they don't want anyone to know that it is glitter, and that if you looked at it, you wouldn't even know that it's glitter. The journalist then asks if you'd even be able to see the glitter at all in the finished product, to which the manager replies, "Oh, you'd be able to see something, but yeah, I can't." And this interview single-handedly sparked the great glitter rabbit hole of the internet. Apparently, these clients that purchase glitter are all under a very strict confidentiality clause with GlitterX. They really do not want people to know that their products are made from the sparkly stuff. The industry these products are part of is clearly massive, yet no one knows what it is. So what even is glitter? By definition, it is aluminum metallized polyethylene terephthalate, essentially plastic that has been aluminized and shredded into tiny specks that sparkle. And it's used in a lot of things, from credit cards, passports, currency, football helmets, cosmetics, jet skis, granite countertops, even toothpaste, allegedly. But none of these are quite big enough to be this top industry buyer of glitter. One of the leading theories is that this biggest glitter industry is for boat paint, which many manufacturers do admit they use it in their boats. And they don't want people to know about it because of how much microplastics in the glitter these boats are really dumping into the ocean, which is a hot topic these days and is why they'd want to keep it such a secret. Others claim that it's being dumped into beaches to make the sand sparkle, or that it's just Crest toothpaste and we're rubbing the microplastics directly into our gums, as well as for use in military applications, which would obviously be highly classified, and this is where the theory takes an unexpected turn. Remember that super secret company that basically founded glitter? The other New Jersey company that isn't GlitterX? Turns out they're actually not as big of a secret as they'd like to be, called Meadowbrook Inventions, which was founded by Henry F. Rushman, a German-American machinist who invented modern glitter in the 1930s, and also happened to be part of the Manhattan Project, the highly classified operation that created the atom bomb. So the guy who invented glitter also helped create the world's first nuclear weapon. Who would have known? Meadowbrook's machines that make glitter are also commonly used for government contracts for products like rocket fuel, airplane brake shoes, and anti-radar chaff, which are chopped up fibers they shoot out of military planes that can block radar, redirect heat-seeking missiles, and can even be used to simulate poor weather conditions on radar. Good thing the government would never do that. Henry W. Rushman, the son of the original creator, was interviewed and even admitted to what they were really using glitter for all these years, specifically mentioning money, passports, toothpaste, and all those military applications like that anti-radar chaff, and even mentioned it was used in special batteries they produced for a military contractor called Picatinny Arsenal. Batteries that he claimed produce more electricity than any other battery we've ever known, and was pretty quiet about it after that. If there's anything we've learned about the government, it's that they love spending money, and their budget is essentially endless, especially if it's for the military. And given all these military uses of glitter, as well as its founder's roots in the Manhattan Projects and connection to atomic bombs, this one might be our answer. What other industry could be so secret that the New York Times article described it as CIA levels of obfuscation? How about the CIA itself? Perhaps once again the government is behind it all, using the same sparkly powder found in children's art projects for military applications, fighter jets, rocket fuel, money, and passports. Possibly even some new high-tech super battery they don't want the rest of us to know about. What a plot twist that would be if glitter, of all things, ends up being the government's top secret weapon to control the masses. Yo, the glitter conspiracy is a rabbit.
Mayor General Neil McCasland left an open book on X, and no one is reading his tweets. Think about who this man is. He didn't just work for the Air Force, he ran the Air Force Research Lab. He was the gatekeeper for Pentagon's most sensitive special access programs. Then on February 27th, he walks out his New Mexico home and just vanishes. 10 days before he disappeared, the military pulled a massive PR stunt called Operation Windlord. They used C-17s to transport micronuclear reactors across the country. The news calls it clean energy revolution, but McCasland, he posted one word: idiocracy. He was trying to tell us that while they're disclosing micronukes to the plebs, us, they are hiding the discovery that makes nuclear power look like a campfire. McCasland wrote that electricity can be for free. He explained that a lightning bolt isn't just weather. It's a nonlinear discharge of an adiabatic field that is always flowing around us. He's talking about tapping into the Earth's own magnetosphere. He's telling us that this energy crisis is manufactured lie to keep us all paying for the fuel while the government harvests the sky for free. He goes deeper. He talks about the 2DOF lattice, a forbidden state of physics where mass loses its grip on reality. He says if you sink an ion and an electron wave at a macroscopic interface, you don't take off with engines, you float away. No inertia, no g-forces. It's the technology he was overseeing before he was unplugged. This explains why we see a craft making 90-degree turns that should liquefy a human pilot. And here is the something dark part. McCasland is just one of the 9 top-level American scientists who have disappeared or died in the last year. Most were tied to the Air Force Research Lab. In the 3 addresses yesterday by Trump, Starmer, and Albanese talked about national resiliency and fuel fines. They want us scared and dependent on their grid. McCasland's open book is the only thing standing between us and an engineered dark age. Do your research yourself. His X account is still up. Mayor General
So, plebs refers to the common people, masses, or lower social class, originating from the Roman Republic, where it designated citizens who were not part of the elite patrician class.
Yeah, why am I watching Jeepers Creepers and I'm just now paying attention of the billboard that's on this scene right here? Like, I always pay attention to the creeper eating the human man that he was eating the policeman, but I never pay attention to the billboard where it say tastes so darn good and there's a man there grilling the meat while the creeper is eating the human person, basically insinuating that, bitch, you eat human meat. Like, look at this. Like, look at that, man. Yeah.
Ugh.